Tron Legacy, the sequel to the cult classic Tron, made almost 30 years after the original film. Jeff Bridges and Bruce Boxleitner return to reprise their roles, and they're joined by Gareth Hedlund, Olivia Wilde, James Frain, and Michael Sheen. The story starts in the real world, and we catch up with Flynn's son, Sam. We learn that a few years after the events of the original film, Flynn Sr. disappeared mysteriously, leaving the company in the hands of the standard evil corporate board. In the prologue, we see the adult Sam now, breaking into the building and sabotaging the annual shareholder conference meeting, whatever, by releasing their latest piece of software on the internet for free, with the message that the company shouldn't hoard intellectual property and instead allow everybody to share in it. Which is an interesting point in a film made by Disney, a company that is the biggest lobbyist in terms of US intellectual property law, and they've been able to successfully impact the modifications of that law many times, so that Mickey Mouse remains their sole property pretty much a century after it was created and decades after its creator died. The irony isn't lost on me. Anyway, Sam then gets a message from what appears to be his father's old pager located in the arcade office. He goes in there, discovers a secret part of the office, gets transported into the virtual world, much in the same way that his father was in the first film. And then he finds out that things are not so great as we were led to believe after the ending of the original Tron. The Society of Programs and other digital entities seems to once again be veering toward a dictatorship. And surprise, surprise, at the heart of all those problems, there's Flynn's old man. And we go from there into this adventure film that in many ways is quite similar to the original story. A couple of good guys teaming up against villain programs, fighting in futuristic gladiator games, racing each other using light cycles, and the movie even recycles some of the plot points and lines from the original film. Now, I was not a big fan of that film. I think it aged too badly to be remotely enjoyable today. I found Legacy to be a better movie, even though I don't think it's particularly great itself. The things that I did enjoy would probably start with the visual side. I think the film looks amazing and somehow manages to pull off that impossible task of looking like a spiritual successor to the original Tron without looking utterly ridiculous. The costumes especially look pretty sweet. The CG and the colors are amazing. I think the de-aging work done on Jeff Bridges looks very good. The score, especially the parts done by Daft Punk, who also make a physical appearance in the film, is at times terrific, with the synthwave-inspired tracks really fitting the world of the film. On the other hand, I think there are imperfections, such as casting. I think Hedlund is not charismatic enough to carry the film as the lead, and as much as I love Olivia Wilde, I think she's miscast. Her character is said to be naive and sweet and almost childlike, and I think that, as weird as it may seem, Wilde looks too intelligent, too smart for that type of role. I just couldn't buy that character from her. I also think that the underlying story, the background as to why things on the grid happened the way they did, is total gibberish, and that part of the plot is way too convoluted and complicated. I think it would have benefited from being simpler and making more immediate sense. But the thing that's perhaps the most important is that I was never engaged emotionally in this film. Somehow it failed to grip me in any way. I was watching with this sort of cold interest, but I never cared about the characters or about the world of the film. Why that is, I'm not entirely sure. I guess it's somewhere between Hedlund's low charisma and the faults in the story itself. What matters is the end result, and that is Legacy leaving me fairly uninterested. So, it's a cool looking film and a cool sounding film that somehow lacked that heart that would make me care about it. As it is, I found it just average.